Hey guys, how are you doing? In today's drill, we're gonna help a gas station decide whether or not they should give away a cup of coffee to their customers. Let's take a look at that. So, the question is, your client, a single gas station, has come up with an initiative to increase its profits and would like to know your opinion on whether or not it would work. So, they're planning on giving a cup of coffee to each client who fills their tank there. The rationale behind this is to increase the number of gas station customers that actually go into the store. They will be likely to purchase something, thus increasing store sales and profits. So the idea is to give coffee to get those people who would only fill their tanks to actually go into the store, then end up buying something, and thus increasing profits. So here's a sheet with some data that they have provided you with. So I can see here that we have, well, I'm not going to read all of this to you. You can read it, you can take a look at it, and when you're done, come up with your own answer, say it out loud, not only write it on paper. Remember to use all 4 steps that we've seen in the 4-step approach, and only then look at my answer and see what we have different, what we have the same, and try to change what's wrong in yours to do it better. And try to really gauge if it's wrong or if it's just different based on the principles of each step that I said in the 4-step approach video. Okay? Now, before I start structuring, there's one question that I want to ask here, and that is, I can see here that the percentage of that go in the store is going to rise by 18%. And so they're initially 40%. Are they going to increase by 18% as a percentage of those 40%, going to something like 48? Or are they going to increase by 18% in absolute value, so like from 40 to 58%? And the same question goes for the percentage that actually purchase something. Is it going to go to 80%, or is it going to increase by 15% of 65? And the interviewer is going to tell me it's going to increase from 40 to 58 and from 65 to 80. So that's at least that's simpler. Now I'm going to show you my answer here, at least my structure for my answer. And I want so if you haven't yet, draw your structure. And I'm going to have a couple of questions to ask before I move on. So after you do your structure, if you have questions, watch me asking these questions. Maybe they'll be the same, probably they'll be the same, and then you can listen to the answer and then move on. So I'm going to tackle this problem looking at gains and losses. So there are gains from increase in fuel gross profits and increase in store gross profits, and there are losses from costs of cups of coffee given away and from cannibalization of cups of coffee that would already be sold. So people that would buy a cup of coffee but instead actually got a cup of coffee for free, those people are not going to buy, and I'm going to lose some profits from that. Now, the 2 questions I want to ask are, what is the average ticket in the store? I'm going to need that in order to calculate the increase in store gross profits. And number 2, what are the costs? Are there other costs that might impact this? So I'm thinking costs of promoting this offer, costs of employees' time making this coffee, or any other fixed costs that might not have been mentioned. And the interviewer is going to tell me the average ticket in the store is $20 and that there are no other costs that might impact on this, or at least I'm not to consider those. So now you can move on, finish your answer, and then I'm going to comment a little bit on this structure, and then I'm going to move on and do my calculations. So a few comments that I want to make here. The first one is, this is a mathematically and logically simple problem. The complexity here is in, you have to notice that there are two different types of gains and 2 different types of losses. The increase in store gross profits is the obvious gain. The non-obvious one is increase in fuel gross profits. And the obvious loss is cost of giving away cups of coffee. The non-obvious one is the cannibalization of cups of coffee that would already be sold. And if you notice, here there's a logically missing piece of data. I could not move on without knowing the average ticket in the store to know the increase in store gross profits. But there's a piece of data missing that's not logically missing. It's just, it could be relevant, but it's not in this case. And that is other costs that might impact in this. Because it came to me that there might be other costs. I could need to promote this. There could be employees' time being used for stuff. So I need to ask that. And I just want to catch your attention to this. And now something else that you should notice is I'm using gross profits for everything. And that's because all of my gains and costs are variable here. So all of my increase in gross profits will be my increase in net profits. So I can just work with gross profits instead of adding more complexity to this. Now, moving on to my answer. First, I want to calculate the increase in fuel gross profits. So I'm going to do increase in number of customers times average gross profits per client. That equals increase in gross profits from fuel. And the increase in number of customers is 800 customers times 10%, 80 customers. The average gross profits per client is $60, the average ticket times the gross margin 10%. I have $6. $6 times 80 customers, $480 per week. Now next, increase in store gross profits. And that is increase in number of customers that purchase in the store times the average gross profits per client, and that equals increase in gross profits from the store. Increase in number of customers that purchase in the store is the difference between the number of customers that purchased in the store before and after my campaign or my giveaway. So let's look at before first. We used to have 800 customers. 40% of those went into the store. 65% of those actually bought something. So 40% of 800 is, actually I want to do 65 first. 65% of 800, that is 50%, so 400, plus 10%, so 80, so that's 480, plus 5%, which is half of the 10%, so 40. So this is 520 customers. Now I want to multiply this by 40%. So this is 40 for each 100, and I have 500, so this gives me 200, and 40% of 20 is 8. This gives me 208 customers. And now the after scenario is 880 customers times 58% times 80%. So let me think how I'm going to do this. So this seems slightly complex. So the first thing I want to do is reality check this value so that I'll make sure that I won't make a mistake. So 58 is similar to 60%. 60% times 80%. 6 times 8 is 48. So it's around 48%. And 48% is around half. So around half of 880 customers. That's between 400 and 450 customers. All right, so my final answer should be between those. Now, the way I want to do this is I want to multiply 800, not 880, by 58%, which is the most complex one. Then I'll subtract 20%, and then I'll add back 10% because I used 800 instead of 880. Okay, so 800 times 58%, that's 10%, 50% of 800, 400, plus 5% of 800, which is 40, plus 3%. Actually, I can add 10%, so 400 plus 80, which is 480. So this is 60%. Now I'll subtract 2%. 2% is 16. So I've got 480 minus 16, which is 464. Now I want to find 80% of this. So 80% of 464. I want to subtract 20% of this. So 20% of 400 is 80. 20% of 60 is 2 times 6, 12, and 20% of 4 is around 1. So I'm going to subtract 93 from 464. So this is 1, 3, 16, 7, 371. Now I want to add back those 10%. So 371 plus 37.1 brings me to 0.180, 408 customers approximately. Alright, so the difference between those is 200 extra customers. Now, average gross profits per client is $20 times 25%, that's the gross margin, $5. The product of those two is $1,000 per week. Alright, next, cost of cups of coffee given away. So that is the number of cups of coffee given away times the cost per cup of coffee, which equals the total costs from cups of coffee given away. So number of cups of coffee given away is the number of customers times the percentage of customers that go into the store. So gas station customers times the percentage that go into the store times the percentage that actually get their cup of coffee. And I did not get this piece of data, and I would like to ask the interviewer, do we have an estimation for this? And the interviewer says, we don't. What do you think? And what I would say is I would go with 100%, just to make sure, because in case most of the customers actually want to get their coffee, this promotion should still work. Okay, it should not be based on the assumption that many customers will not take their coffee. Okay, and all right, let's assume that. So that's 100%. So I have 880 times 58%. I'm going to get half of that. That's 50%, 440. Then I'm going to add up 10% of that, and that is 88. And I want to subtract 2%, so that's 8.8 times 2, 18, minus 18. So I have 440 plus 70, which is 88 minus 18. And this gives me 510 customers. Okay? Cost per cup of coffee, $1. Total costs from cups of coffee given away, $510 per week. If we were to consider that only the extra customers, the extra 18% would get their coffee, then that would be around 1/3 of that. So something similar to, something close to 160 or something like that. Okay? Now, next, cannibalization of cups of coffee that would already be sold. So I want to know the number of cups of coffee given away that would have been bought times gross profits per cup of coffee, which equals total cost from cannibalization. So I have 510 customers. 5% of those actually would buy their cups of coffee anyway. So that is 10% is 51. Half of that is 25.5. So I'll go with 26. And the gross profits per cup of coffee, that's the price minus the costs. So 2.5 minus 1, I have 1.5. So I want to multiply those. The product of them is 26 plus 13, which is half of 26, $39 per week. I would ask the interviewer here if I can round this up to 40. And whatever, I'm not going to here, but I'm going to later on. So to get the sum of all this, I have $1,000 plus 480. 480 minus 510 is minus 30. And then I want to subtract other 40 there, so that's minus 70. 1,000 minus 70, 930. If I did not want to round up those 39 to 40, this would be 931. Okay? Now, next step, what does this number mean? How do I feel about this? Let's think about this value for a second. So how much does this actually represent? $930 per week as expected financial impact of this initiative. You could say, well, that's almost $50,000 per year. Okay, that still doesn't help me much. So I know that the gross profits from gasoline from fuel are 800 customers times $6 in gross profits per customer, which is for $4,800, close to $5,000 per week. And the gross profits from the store are those 208, so I'll go with 200 clients times $5, which equals $1,000 per week. Of course, there are still customers that only go into the store and don't refill their tanks before, but well, I don't have any data on those. If I do, well, let me know, please, Mr. Interviewer. But since there is no interviewer here, I'll deal with the numbers that I have. So this is around $6,000 in gross profits per week, and I'm talking about an increase of around 1,000, so that's nearly 15 or 16% of gross profits. Of course, that's even more of net profits. So that sounds relevant to me, but there is something that I would worry about. What if other gas stations start doing the same? What would happen? So other gas stations are worried that I'm taking clients away from them, and you can see that from my increase in number of customers that come fill their tanks in my gas station. So they will do the same. What will happen? Well, I've seen that I get 500 from increase in fuel gross profits, 1,000 from increase in store gross profits, and I lose around 500 from giving cups of coffee away. So if I were to lose my increase in fuel gross profits, this would go down to around 500. So I would lose around over 50% of the financial impact. Not to mention that I would not have these extra 10% customers buying in my store too. And so I would expect these 16% of increase in current gross profits to become, in the long term, around 8% of gross profits, which may be good enough. I need to ask my client what they think of this. Is this good enough for them? And also, doing this first could give me a leading advantage because I'm going to get more clients for a while, and that might make me acquire some loyal customers if there is anything in our business that retains those customers. And honestly, it doesn't really seem like there is. Maybe my client will disagree with me. Maybe a thorough analysis of their operations will show me differently. But initially, this is just a gas station, and getting more customers for a while will not lead me to long-term loyal customers. So, of course, the next step here would check with my client whether or not they are satisfied with an around 16% increase in gross profits in the short term, and in the long term, around 8% increase in gross profits. And that's all going to come from purchases that clients were not going to do but will do just because they happened to come into the store because they got their cup of coffee. Okay, well, I hope this drill helped you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.